Hello everyone, welcome to Test Automation Fundamental Series Module 8. I'm your trainer Azeem Tariq, Lead Test Architect at Xamaa Test Automation Labs. If you didn't watch any of the previous modules in this series, I would highly recommend to check the links from the description of this video to understand the complete context. First 7 modules were designed to set the foundation with basic concepts, utilizing Selenium WebDriver to interact with web application. We set up our project, got the introduction, configured the dependencies, and then we started handling text fields. We did handle few drop downs, links and buttons, radio buttons. We even handled complicated checkboxes. And then we learned how to create an XPath to handle complicated scenarios like checkboxes and radio buttons. So starting from this round, which is module 8, we would be learning test automation framework. Keeping in view, this module might be an extended, so we will cover this module in few sessions. You might wonder, can't we keep writing code the way we initially started? Well, of course, we can. Let's have a look. We covered only few tabs of application under test with a single scenario to load test data. And we have this many lines of code. Think about it. If we complete few scenarios for code, and it might go over a couple of thousand of lines, at that stage, trying things to keep up manually might not even be possible. Let's try to understand a few cases. Imagine if one of our tests fails, or one of our line statement fails, and throw a while exception. We don't want to see the whole thing crashing down, right? The other scenario comes to mind. Let's say over time we increase test coverage and now we got a ton of tests to run. We are talking like, let's say, 4 hours to execute all tests. Can we really hold up our whole team for a solid 4 hours just to give a thumbs up for a release candidate? I mean, come on. We need to have a systematic way to overcome these challenges. That is where test framework helps us to keep the flow. They can facilitate to organize tests. They also can help us to run tests in parallel, which is more like hitting the fast forward on your execution time. In this training, we will be using TestNG as our test framework. And we will build our test automation framework on top of it. Let's include TestNG in our project by configuring dependencies. By now, we should already know that if we need to add some project or some packages or some dependencies in our project, what to do. I will open pom.xml. Previously, we used it for Selenium WebDriver and WebDriver Manager, if you remember, in our configuration and installation session. And once I'm here in the dependencies area, then I will also open Maven repository in a browser, and then I will search TestNG. and search for the latest stable build, which is looks like 7.8 is good, and I will copy the Maven dependencies and navigate back to my project and copy this dependency here, hit save, and I will update my Maven project also. Confirming, yes, update, it is updating, and yes, done. The second thing which I need to do for TestNG is I need to add its plugin for Eclipse. So that I will go from the help menu and click on Eclipse Marketplace. Once it's loaded, it will take few seconds to load, and once it's loaded, type TestNG and hit enter. It will give you the TestNG for Eclipse option. In my case, it's already installed, then I would recommend install it because we are going to use it. And in next steps, I will explain how we are going to use it. Let me close pom.xml and create folder structure for our basic test automation framework. To start with, I will create a basic structure and then we evolve it as we proceed to intermediate and advanced training series, which means technically we will be building up our intermediate and advanced level of test automation framework on this basic structure. Okay, I will right click on my project and go to the properties and hit on properties. And then from the left navigation, I will hit Java build path and then click on source tab. And what we need now, we need few folders here. Okay, I will hit create add folder, and under test I will click on test and then create a folder, call it Java, and then hit finish. And now I will hit OK. And you notice that the new folder, created folder, is appeared on this area. So now we have a source test Java folder, and it says Eclipse says it's a new folder. I say, yeah, it's okay. And let me hit apply and close. Okay. Once I do that, then you might notice that this newly created folder is appeared in package folder, package explorer section of the Eclipse. Okay. Now I will create test automation framework folder structure. Let's create a package under test first. Right click on it, add new package, and I will call it, let's say, functional tests. Functional tests. Okay. And then hit finish. functional test package now has been created. Okay, I need few more folders under main code area. So how we will be do that? We'll be doing that. We will be using this main area as our backend functional repository where we create all the code, and then we will use this test as a repository where we have all the tests. Let me create a few packages here. Let's say right click new package and call it, let's say, common. And the naming convention for the package is start with a small common, and then because we have multiple pages also in our web application, so I will create another package called, let's say, pages. Okay, so we have common package, pages package, functional tests under the test area. Apparently, we have the basic folder structure ready to start refactoring our existing code, which we created in last 7 modules to set up and create a basic level of test automation framework. Let's launch our application under test so we can see a list of pages we need to create. I will open browser and type our application. Okay, so this seems like a landing page. Maybe we can call it as a home page. And then because we started working on truck type vehicle, let's see. On truck tab, we have 5 sub tabs here: enter vehicle data, insurance data, product data, select price and code. Let's create every tab as a page class. So in future, if the same web element or related functionality needed in some other areas, we can reuse those components instead of creating the same objects everywhere. Okay, let's see. In this step, we can create all these pages. Let's start doing it from the home page first. What I will do in my project, under the pages package we created, I will create a class called, let's say, home page. And this time now, because we are working on more like a test automation framework, we will no more be requiring main function to run these tests as a Java application. So I will not be creating main functions. But at this step, I will be creating all those classes first as a structure, and then we will refactor our previously created code and bring them to individual category. Let's do that home page, and then if I go back to my application, then next was enter vehicle data. Okay, let me create a page class. So it is enter vehicle data page, and then next was enter insurance data page. Uh, okay, the next is enter product data page. And then we have 2 more pages: select price and send code. And then the last one is a send code. Okay, so the pages for each tab are created. We can reuse them. Okay, now what we need to do, let's think about, we also have some code in our project which we were working that was related to initializing WebDriver and managing WebDriver. So, but that looks like does not belong to any page, and it might be needed for each and every area. So that might be a common area. So what I will do under common area, I will create another class called maybe driver. Okay. So now we have a driver class, which is a common, and it will be commonly used for everyone. And then we have every page as a class. Let's kick off a test automation framework by rearranging our previously generated code into these classes. During that, if we see any pattern of recurring functionality, we can then develop a shared method for that specific segment to prevent redundancy and simplify maintenance. Let's initiate with a driver class. Okay, so we are here and proceed through our code chronologically. Okay, this is our code so far we created, and if I start analyzing our code, the first part of our code, starting with the web driver, it is all about, apparently it is all about setting up WebDriver first, setting up Chrome options. This is more specifically because I need to open browser in another window. It's not required for everyone. And then WebDriver would be a common code. And then getting the application rolling by loading the URL. Okay. So let me create a method in a driver class, and we can call it, let's say, public wide, and I would call maybe method launch application. Okay, this is a standard way of creating to create a method in Java applications. This is our method now, starting with method start with this uh, small letter, class name starts with a capital letter. Okay, and now we have a one method in a driver class. What I will do, I will go to our previously generated code and copy paste this segment. We can do this also. We don't need at this moment, but it's okay. We can bring all this code here. Okay, so now interestingly, if you see, notice that it is complaining about open on monitor because that method I created in that class at the bottom, and it was more like specifically for my own purpose, but I will bring that temporarily in our driver class. So it means now what I do, I will bring this method at the bottom so that we can just use it. Okay, so it means now the driver class can launch our application. Next, I will create a test under functional test package, which is here. We created this package and we wanted to use this for tests. Let me create a class and call it, because we are dealing with a truck, let's call it truck tests. Truck tests. Okay, so this is my new class now. And then write my first test in a TestNG format. Let's say my first test, I want to see, which actually would be a method in TestNG with TestNG annotation. What should I call? Let's see what functionality we want to test in our application and a test so that we can name it accordingly. I open application, I launched here, clicked on truck, it navigated to the first tab, and then which one is the simple field? The simplest field is this text field. Let's say text field is engine performance. Okay, so let's name our test method is, let's say, public void, and then name. Let's think about a naming convention for all our tests. We always start with verify underscore and then some functionality. In our case, it's engine performance. I would say engine performance, maybe boundary values. How's that? Boundary values, and that is our first method. Okay, so let me save it. So my truck class has been saved with a first method called verify engine performance boundary values. Now, how can I convert this method into a TestNG? I will use a TestNG annotation test. And once I do that, basically it complains. And so far with our coding, we know that if some squiggly red line comes across, basically it needs some package. Now, to import a package, there are two ways. I take my mouse on that and click on the import, or I just click Control space. This time I will use mouse. Let's see, import test ng annotation. And it imported the package and looks happy now. Okay. Now, before actually I design my test scenario, let's try to call the method which we created in the driver class. So in the driver class, let me close the module now. It's okay. Let me see the driver. What was that launch application? So there are multiple ways to call a method from another class. First way is to create an object of that class. Let's say it's a driver. Let's say I call it a driver is equal to new driver. Yeah, I call it's the default constructor, and when I click on it, because I know that it's my own created class which is in a common package. If I click on it and look for that, it's a import driver from common. Yeah, please import it so that it is visible to me, and now I can use those methods. Okay, once it's there, now my driver class instance is created in this class, which is my truck tests, and simply I can use this object, and with the dot it can give me facility to call all those methods. That is one way. But think about it, if we create a driver object, we might need to create, because the driver launching application is kind of a thing which we might need everywhere. So the other way which we can do, it might be different. Let me see if I can, instead of, okay, let me delete this. So instead of that, if I say extends driver, so now basically what I'm saying, the driver is my parent class, and can you extend it? So I can directly utilize that driver class without even creating its instance. It means now in that case, if I say launch and click control and space, and launch control and space, so it should give me a launch application. Here you go, launch application directly. So now I'm directly accessing my driver class method from here. And let's run it and test it if it works or not. Let me save this one. And this time, interestingly, before we used to run, you remember we used to run our application as a Java application. But this time, because now we have a TestNG installed and its add-on is also installed, so now we have this specific option popped up that, do you want to run it as a TestNG? And I say, yeah, please run it as a TestNG. Let's see what does it do. It is doing something. These complaints are okay because they are more like a standard, but it opens a browser. So technically it launched application. That is great. Let me close this. So we are able to launch our application without calling a Java application, but with the TestNG, our first test, although this test does not have any verification or validation in this method, but it was more like just to see if it works or not. Before we proceed to write actions in our first test, let's explore some important TestNG annotations which can help us to optimize our code. I will create another test method. Let's say public void verify underscore another test. And this test will also call launch application, because think about it, there will be no test which can do any action without launching an application. So it means application launching has to be repeated for each and every test. How can we optimize it? And let me first create its annotation, which is test, because this is a test. Now we have two tests. And if you see on the right side, now we have two tests in this browser also. Okay. We don't need this driver. I will delete it, but I will create another method called, let's say, public void maybe setup. And okay, so this is my method, And let's say I call this launch application in this method. And instead of calling this annotation, the test annotation on top of it, let's say call before method annotation. And now it complains because it needs that annotation to be imported. So I will say first, then click on it and say before method, yes, please import this annotation. Okay, so it has imported. And now, interestingly, this before method has this launch application. Let's say we delete launch application and launch application from both our tests. But I also want to run. Now I have two tests. I want to run these tests so that we know that it works fine. Let me right click on it, run a test, TestNG. It is doing something. Here you go. So even without calling my launch application, my application has been launched. And now I don't need to repeat it, because before every test method, this setup method will be called because it has annotation, this before method. So I can simply perform some steps in my tests and hand over this launch application to my setup before method. And even you think bigger picture, we can even bring that not call to every class. We can bring it back to our driver also and provide this annotation before method. Then it mean any class, test class, which would be extended with the driver class, mean that the child of that driver class would automatically be calling this setup method. So in that way, basically our code will be optimized, and in our test, we don't need to repeat those steps. Let's move setup method to driver class so that it can be used for all test classes, and make sure it works. I will cut from here, Control X, move to driver and paste it here. And it didn't complain anything so far. Let me save here and try to run one of my tests so that I know that it works. Run as TestNG. If it launches application, it means our method works fine. Here you go. So we are so far good. Let me close this application and we are good now. Let's move to our module 7. Line 28. So line 28, if you notice that it's more like clicking on the truck tab, seems to be related on the landing page, which we call home page. And imagine all the navigations to the vehicle type tabs will be initiated from that page. So let's copy it from here and navigate to home page. And we have a home page here. What I will do, I will first create a method, some method, and let's say call it public wide click truck tab, and hit enter and paste that value. Okay, so now Now it's interesting. It complains about driver. Let's analyze why it's complaining about driver. Because in this context, in this scope, there is no driver. Driver is sitting in the driver class, and we want to use it here. So it's the same way we did in the test method. So what I will do, I will try to extend this home page with driver, and it might ask to import that our package. So what we can do, maybe we can, yes, import driver common. Yes, please import it, but it still complains. Why? Let's go and check inside driver. Inside the driver, if I see my web driver was sitting here inside a function, it is not even at the class level scope. So I need to modify a little bit so that the driver is visible outside the class and it can be utilized. If we need it for the home page, then we will also be needing that driver for the other classes also, pages classes. So it means I need to refactor this driver guy here, and I will copy it and bring it to a class level first and make its scope as a public, because we also want to see this outside the class, and the declaration I will remove from here. So it means now we are using the same driver which was declared here, the variable, and then it's initialized here. And now if I save it here and go to my home page, save it here, and see it actually no more complaint about driver. So it means it's still not ideal, but at least at this level we managed it. Now imagine one day some developer decides that the truck tab ID nav truck is not as suitable, it's not an ideal, and want to change it. So with this kind of mechanism, because we will not be using this anywhere outside of this home page, outside the home page we will always be using this click truck tab. So it's the only location in the test which, even if it breaks, we will come here and we'll fix it, and it will be fixed for all the tests. And if we use this driver command for the navigation in individual tests, then we have to fix that in each and every uh, test. Okay, so far good. We have a mechanism now. So think about it. If we have a click truck tab, then we would have maybe click on campers, click on some other automobiles. So this is more like our systematic page, landing page for the home page. Similarly, I'm gonna copy code from module 7 related to enter vehicle data and move it to its respective class. Let's see. Line 30 to 67. So line 30 to 67, if I copy all this data and move to enter vehicle data class, let's say if I create a function here, public void, maybe enter data, rather enter vehicle data. and leave it as is and copy all my statements here. And yeah, we notice that the driver is complaining now, and that we found that if we extend driver and then import driver package, which is driver is in a common it's not giving me the option. Okay, maybe I can import it manually as well. So import common dot driver. So all the driver complaints went away. Okay. Although we will refactor this complete functionality in detail, but at the high level, first of all, I want to identify the difference. All these statements, they insert some test data, except this last one, which actually clicks on the next button. Let me copy this and split it to a separate function. Let's say public void, click next, and okay. So we have two functions now, enter vehicle data and click next button in enter vehicle data page. So technically now our basic structure is ready. We will refactor later, but let's create one or two functional test cases so that we can start reusing this data, and then we will refactor these functions also. Let me save my class. Why it's giving me error? Okay, the error is gone. So it means now it is good for writing the test case. I am going to tackle a functional test for a text field on enter vehicle data page. And for your homework, assignment, lab work, you guys can run through same drill for all the required text fields on all three tabs. Logic might remain same with minor variation. I will be available to answer to all the problems reported in the comment section of this video. Let's break down the logic and understand our tests. My application, here I click on the track tab and then I click on the engine tab, engine performance, input some value. It says value must be a number between 1 to 2000. So the required input needs to be between 1 and 2000. Here we go. So we have a test. I will be checking this last message, which shows up with error. So let's kick off our first functional test. And steps will be, we need to launch our application, navigate to truck tab, then enter a larger data, for example 14,500, get this error message, save this error message somewhere, and compare it with the expected error. So it means we create we will create some field or some variable with the expected data, which would contain must be a number between 1 to 2000, and then we compare it with that. To achieve that, I will follow triple A methodology. Let's understand what is that. I will go in my truck test. We have created this test, and I will do triple A is arrange, act, and assert. So it means I will arrange my data first, and then I will do some actions, and then at the end I will assert. So it means in my test there are 3 sections where I will be performing all these 3 steps. Okay. To do that, we also need to find, we know the web element, we also need to find this error state XPath also. Let's try to find this one first. I will inspect it, and now we know how to create an XPath. I will copy this guy, and if I see the next to this web element is the class which is error, and it has some displayed this value also. Let's try to find the XPath for this. I will hit Control F, and then I will try to create XPath. I know it has an attribute ID with the value in single quotes, which is engine performance, and then after reaching there, there is a sibling which is a following sibling which has a tag span. Technically, we have an XPath, but imagine if there is some other tags show up in between, then this XPath will break. So to make sure that we are creating a solid XPath, I will add its class name also. Maybe we can say XPath class is equal to error, or maybe more solid, I can say my XPath contains a class which has a text error. There you go. So this is comparatively a solid XPath. Now I will take this XPath, go to my engine, go to my enter vehicle data class. I will go to enter vehicle data class, and I will create, because now we are going to handle this error, so I will create this maybe public void. This is engine performance error, and get this, and this is my XPath which I copied, and now I need to get the value, text value from this. Maybe I can do driver dot find element by XPath, and XPath is, we just got it, and once you reach to that XPath, get its text value. There you go. And once you get this value, this is the value which we need to check, and maybe you can return it to us. And once you return this, oh, this is a void. What I will do, I will change its return type as string. So this is my function in the vehicle class, enter vehicle data, which will return me an error. Now I need, although I had enter vehicle data, the entire data I copied here, but now I need a custom function which can pass only one field data so that we can quickly run our test. Okay, so what I will do, I will create another method here, public string, public void engine performance, and so this is, what I will do, I will set engine performance. And where is my engine performance? And engine performance value I'm setting here. I will copy this as is and paste it here. And I can do maybe set engine performance value. And so this is a hard-coded value. Instead of this, so maybe I can also do that string pass value. And once this value is passed, you can transfer this value here. Here you go. So now we have control S, save, and I can also do control A and control I, which will set my indentation. Okay, so now I have two methods. One method is setting my value in the engine performance, and the second method is getting the value of its error text message. And these are the two methods we technically need. And now think about it. Now we need to logically set our driver, because now we want to, from our test, we want to approach to our home page so that it click on the truck tab and then approach to enter vehicle data page so that we can enter value and get value. So we need to restructure our code a little bit. Let's do that refactor before we actually design our test. Now we need to make a systematic flow so that we can access all these objects. So what I will do, I will save truck class first, and enter vehicle data is also not saved. I will save it first, and then I will create a kind of, now currently what is happening in my driver class, I have a web driver which is there, but it will, once it will go to other classes from other objects, it might not work because we need to set the references. So what I will do, I will create a class here, and that would be our container. Maybe we can say maybe it's our object container. So this is our object container, and in that area we can contain all our objects. For example, I can maybe now, because I want to keep those objects available everywhere so that we can use them. So I will make them static, because once they're static, they would be available everywhere. Uh, they will be loaded. First, they were loaded for my project. So I will start with WebDriver and create an object for WebDriver, and it will ask me to maybe import that WebDriver. Yes, please import it. And then once I do that, then the next thing we need a home page. What I will do, public static home page, and I will create an object of home page, and it will ask me to import pages. Yes, please import pages. And rather, because I need to import all the pages, so instead of a specific page, I will say, can you import everything? So in that way, basically, I don't need to do for every page separately. And then I can do public static. That is my enter vehicle data. Enter vehicle data. Maybe I can say vehicle data and give me enter vehicle data. So cannot be resolved, but let me see. Maybe I have some typo. I will copy this name exactly and object containers, paste it. Yeah, okay, so it was a typo. Enter vehicle data page. Yeah, page was missing, so I was using only the data. Okay, so my three objects are aligned here. The next thing which I need to do, I need to go to my driver class where I initialized this WebDriver. Let me disable that WebDriver. After doing that, all the WebDriver will start complaining, and then I can basically extend this with my object container. Okay, so once my object container is extended, then basically everything is driving. So basically now we have the superclass is object container where all the objects are there, and then the child is the driver, and all other classes they basically extend from the driver. So the flow would be more like a systematic, and after doing that, I am basically initializing here before my test, launching my application. Once my application is launched, I also want to initialize those instances here so that we get the value for them. And the other one is vehicle data. I also want to initialize here, and once initialized. Okay, so now we are kind of set with everything systematic. And now if I go here in my truck class, in my test class where I want to set the, so in my arrange section, what I can set, I maybe can define, I need a string which is expected error value maybe, and we know that the expected value was it was must be a number between 1 and 2000, I think. Yeah, so that is my expected value. If I go back here and say must be a number between 1 to 2000. Okay, so we are, so far we are good. And the next step, what I want is, once I launch this test, what it will do, because it extends from driver, so it will, application will be launched, home page will be initiated, the object will be initiated, and the vehicle data will be initialized. Okay, so now I want my application to navigate me to the truck tab. And we have that on the home page. If I go here, click to truck tab, yeah, that we created a function, so it means I can now act like, although I'm still preparing all this, but it's more like an arrangement. So what I can do, I can say home page, can you click on truck tab, and say, okay, once you are on the truck tab, that is where what I want to do. I want to do vehicle data. I want to set some value for engine performance, and my value is, let's say I want to set 14,500, so it is more than actually the threshold of that value. And once it is, then I can say a string error. So what is my error then? Vehicle data, can you get engine performance error? So get engine performance error. So once we receive that error, now we have the error. This is my actual error. This was my expected error. If there is an error, then what you do, maybe just to make sure, although in some cases, if it's pass, it's pass. Maybe what I can do, I can say, can you print it out for me? The print line for me, and that is basically my error. Error is, and I can say error. But because it's a test, so I also want to run an assert statement. And for assert, I want to say maybe assert equal, yes. And the actual value, I want to say it's my error value. And expected value is actually the value which I have set for this. And once it is, yeah, so this looks like pretty straightforward test for me. And let's try to run it using TestNG. Okay, our error must be a number between 1 to this. And if I go here and it's pass, because that is what we were expecting, and we are saying that once you are in the error state, that is where we want to see. And so it means that is our first functional test we have completed. And now I would recommend everyone, if you can try to apply the similar logic for all the text field. Let's say, for example, we have a text field here, we have some text field here, payload, total weight, all these are the required, and they have that kind of a logic built in, and that would be a good hands-on practice for everyone. And yeah, and then if you have, and if you find or you've come across some issue, throw your problems in the comment section of this video. I will be happy to help you out solving those problems, and see you in next module. Okay, stay tuned.